Well, welcome to Thor Photography on YouTube. We are doing something a little different today. We have a special guest with us. I'm going to interview Rachel Greiman. She is a writer and photographer in Denver, Colorado, and she owns Green Chair Stories. It's a company dedicated to telling stories and showing people how beautiful their real life is. She lives with her giant dog, an 85-pound Bernedoodle named Bernadette. Bernadette, you'll have to help me there, Rachel. And her giant husband, 6'6" man named Travis, in a small house in the city. So, without any further ado, welcome to the Thor Photography YouTube channel. So glad that you could join us.
So I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, it's the power of technology connecting people, right? So, well, tell me a little bit about how you ended up getting into photography and sort of the start of your journey, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so I guess I would say I got into photography when with my mother. She photographed everything my whole life. And not just photographs, she had her like massive video camera that like sat on her shoulder and she had to haul around everywhere. She documented what seems like every minute of our lives. I have 4 siblings, so there's 5 of us. And she just did a really excellent job of photographing the everyday and capturing kind of who we all were as little people. And she photographed every sporting event, and I remember getting rolls of the film in the mail, and we would all race to open them up and see what moments she captured. And then when I got to high school, I decided that I wanted to learn more about photography because I had watched her do it my whole life. And so I took every photo class that was offered at my high school, and I learned film, and I learned how to develop film in the darkroom. And digital came out like my senior year of high school, but we were still off film. And by came out, I mean it was like made to the general public. So my mom was still using a film camera, but I was like, Mom, there's this cool thing, digital, that you can buy. So I convinced her to buy a digital camera, and I remember in 2005 we took a beach trip, and I like played with it and thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I wish I could remember the model of it, but I remember spending the whole weekend, and I was like, I can see my photo right away. It's so new, which is crazy because that was 12 years ago.
Yeah.
But
So it's like 2.3 megapixels or something like that. Yeah.
what? No, it was like a nice Canon camera. Like, I mean, it was probably like 12 or 13 megapixels.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
It was like state of the art, high tech, amazing. And I remember my senior year, then I convinced our yearbook, like, not sponsor, but like the teacher that was in charge of yearbook to let me use my digital camera. And she was like, I've been doing this for 20 years. We've never done anything like this. And I was just persuasive enough to convince her to do it. So I took all the photos that year of all the sports games in digital, which is so funny. I would love to go look at those images now and see how blurry they were.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty radical, you know. I mean, for a yearbook that was used to just shooting film, I mean,
oh yeah,
that's pretty crazy, cutting edge.
It was pretty progressive of her, but it was really fun to let it happen. And then I went to college, and I was a photojournalism major, and everything was in film again because it just hadn't quite evolved yet. So I still learned film in college, but then my senior year of college, which would have been 2009-ish, we were doing kind of a hybrid, like some film, some digital. And we were learning multimedia, and we were doing film and all of that. And they were like, this is the future of journalism. So it was a great learning experience for me. I was very lucky to get in right when digital was becoming the norm.
Well, that's really interesting. You know, you mentioned this track of photojournalism. You know, is that something that, you know, why photojournalism versus like a fine art? Was it the storytelling aspect of that that sort of captured your interest most?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always been a writer. Since I was little, I loved to write stories, and get to know people. I love to ask questions. I'm very nosy. So I think kind of learning that there was a major that I could ask a lot of questions and write stories and take photos, it was like jackpot for me. I went to college and I was a communications major for a while just because I like to talk a lot and it sounded something that would fit my personality. But then by the time I got to be a sophomore, it was like, oh, photojournalism is an option for me. Let's explore this thing that I've done, since I was little and I've watched my mom do and see if I like it. And I did. I loved it. Like the first class I took, I was sold. It was capturing people in their environment, asking them personal questions and having immediate access to them. And I loved it. It was like an adrenaline high for me.
Yeah. Well, that's very, very interesting. So if we fast forward here to 2017 now, you shoot in this sort of journalistic, like families in this same journalistic kind of style. Is that something that you did sort of purposefully, or did you fall into that? Tell me a little bit about your background in terms of shooting families. Like why families and not like sports or other kinds of stories?
Yeah. So I worked with nonprofits for a long time, and I photographed for them and I wrote for them, and it was great. And then I just, I want to say like 2013, I had some family friends that asked for family photos. And I was like, sure, I can do that. I know how to work a camera. I can pose you. So I started to do that, and more people started asking for family photos. And I started doing it and probably did it for like a year and a half. And I was still working full time. And so it wasn't like suiting me. It was fitting me exactly. It wasn't hitting home. And then, if I'm being completely honest, I saw a creative live class with Kirsten Lewis, who is now a dear friend of mine. But at the time, I did not know her at all. And she was doing 72-hour sessions with one family. And it blew my mind. Like, I was spending an hour with a family in a park at sunset. And I was doing what everyone else was doing. And it wasn't resonating with me as a person. And when I watched this class with her, I remember I was at my full-time job watching this class. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like, if I shoot families, this is how I'm going to do it. And so I think I fell into families because everybody wants family photos and they asked me to do it. But then once I found this style of shooting and discovered that it was kind of a niche within the family photography realm, I was like, oh, I could do this for a really long time if I can do it this way. And I was so drawn to it right away. And I had no idea how it would look practically or if anybody would want it. But the idea of not having to go to a park, not posing families, not having them wear their most beautiful outfits, it was so attractive to me.
Yeah.
And once I started doing it, it was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. I loved it. It was so intimate. It was so personal. And it was so authentic. There was nothing staged about it. And that, above anything, made me love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's, for people that sort of don't have a concept of this idea of family photojournalism, I thought it'd be good to show a little bit of your work and maybe have you talk through what's going on in the image and how the image was created, a little bit of the behind the scenes kind of work. And so let me pull these up here. There we go. Okay, so this first image has a kid on a couch that's in the background. In the foreground here, there's another kid looking at something or other. Tell me a little bit about this picture and the story behind this.
Yeah. So the kids in that photo are actually twins. And they're very, very funny little kids. And this photo I made during one of my sessions, which I call the best month ever. I go to a family's house every day for a whole month, and it's so fun. These are my favorite sessions because I get to know the family so well. And the kids, after the second or third day, they just completely forget that I'm there, and they just live their weird little lives right in front of me, and I have free reign to document whatever I want. And I love that. So in this image, I think she's just watching TV. And I mean, when's the last time like you and someone else watch TV in your underwear or in a diaper? Like it just doesn't happen in adulthood. And this is just a very normal scene in a 3-year-old toddler's life. You know, she doesn't feel like getting dressed, so she's watching television, and she's completely ignoring me. I'm literally 3 feet from her in this image. And she has no idea that I'm there because she's very invested in Paw Patrol or whatever she's watching at the time. And it seems so mundane and so ordinary when we're looking at it from this perspective, but in 3 or 10 years from now, that mom's going to look at that and her heart is going to melt, remembering that this was a phase of life. Because the ordinary is what we forget. The ordinary is what we don't think to document. And I have the unbelievable privilege of doing that for parents. And I love that.
Yeah. It's almost like, I think it's a peculiar thing because it's almost like you're creating a memory of something in the future. Like there isn't a guarantee about what things will be like in 3 years, but you're establishing a point in time where you know, this is what life is like here in this moment when you're this age, right? So yeah, that's a very, very interesting sort of thought process of being future focused like that. This second image that I'm pulling up here, it's a kid, and it looks like a family member. He's giving him a hug. The family member has a mug of coffee in his hand. Or I'm assuming coffee because that's what would be in my hand. But you know, it might be tea. I don't know. Maybe it's milk. Maybe. But tell me a little bit about this.
Is the dad wearing a red shirt in this one?
Yes.
Okay. So this was a really fun shoot. And I was like so impressed that the mom hired me to do this because it was just really cool. They were surprising their 5 children with a trip to Mexico, and their kids had no idea. And they were waking them up. They had changed all their clocks while the kids were sleeping. So they were actually waking them up an hour early, even though the kids didn't know it. And the kids knew that a photographer would be there in the morning, but they thought that I was just there to document a normal day. And so they got out of bed in the morning. There was a note with some spending money and some clothes to change into and a bag already packed. All 5 kids had this done for them. And it was like, don't ask any questions, just obey mommy and daddy, this is what we're doing. So they had me come over and document this like 2-hour period of the kids getting ready and driving to the airport when the kids found out they were going to Mexico. So it was so cool to be there right when the kids woke up and kind of in the confusion of like, what's happening? What are we doing? So it was on spring break, but the kids had no idea. So I was there, and this is their youngest son.
Okay.
And he couldn't stop hugging his parents. He was so happy that they would take the time to surprise him over and over and over again. And so he literally hugged each of his parents probably 4 times in the 45 minutes he was awake before we left for the airport. So it was just such a sweet, tender moment with like this little 5-year-old who couldn't get over his parents would surprise him. And this is just one representation of many moments that happened that morning. So
yeah, well, I think I think that it's really interesting because in this image and the previous image, there's a certain ordinariness to it. I mean, you don't have a fancy lights or a pretty bokeh in the background or any of that. Where you're capturing the subjects in a space that isn't neatly curated. It's a much different approach and vision than other forms of family photography. So let's look at one more here. Let's see. This is the kid on the ground. Looks like he's got a lightsaber in his hand, or he or she. I'm not sure from here, but yeah.
Okay, so this is actually a passion project of mine. I photograph this family every couple months. I'm really, really inspired by them as a family. They now have 3 kids. Their oldest daughter, Lucia, they call her Lou or Lou Bird. She has a very rare disorder, and so she is developmentally delayed. She's mostly blind, and she's just an inspiration. Like, she draws people in. She's in a wheelchair. She can't walk. She can only sit for a certain amount of time every day. But she's the sweetest little girl. And then they have another daughter just younger than her, named Scout. And they named her Scout so she could kind of be Lou's leader in life, which I think is incredible. And then they just adopted this little boy named River, and little boy from China, so I got to be there when they brought him home from the airport and photographed that meeting. The mother had never met him before he came to the airport, and it was incredible. So this was actually just a couple months ago. Their older dog was actually getting ready to pass away, and they knew it. So a couple days before she passed away, I went over to photograph them with her for the last time. And of course, a 3-year-old has no idea what's happening and no concept that this is a somber time. And so he was running around like a nutcase with a lightsaber, and we played for several minutes, and he had just taken his pants off, I think, in this photo, and then put them back on because his dad, who's standing over him here, made him. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of just a special moment to me because children don't know the sorrow that happens later in life, and they're able to take every day as it comes and able to be happy even when things are sad. Mm-hmm. And that's what this image represents for me, and hopefully for the family as well.
Yeah. You've mentioned a couple times about the structure of your sessions and how they're not like 1-hour sessions, but you mentioned these like 20-minute periods of breaking things up. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about how you coordinate that. Is that something that you have set times or dates that you put on your calendar ahead of time, or is it like, hey, we have this thing going on, can you be here tomorrow? What kind of scheduling? It seems like it'd be a little bit of a tricky balancing act there, especially if you have more than one of these monthly sessions going on.
You have to be available.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with my day in the life, it's just 12 hours. Like, whatever happens at 12 hours, that's what we document. But with my week sessions or my month sessions, like, I literally bring my calendar and pull it out. And then mom will be like, okay, we have swimming lessons here. We have ballet here. You should come to dinner this night. And I'll literally just kind of negotiate it in my schedule and be like, okay, I can do that. I can't do that. What do you want to do here? Mm-hmm. And it's like, here are the days I want to shoot this week. What's happening those days? Can I come? So it's for sure a balancing act. And these families have to be extremely flexible, because sometimes they'll be like, okay, I can shoot at 11 o'clock and that's it. So whatever you're doing at 11, I'm going to come and photograph. Mm-hmm. And the moms, if they've hired me for an entire month, they're normally like, great, we're going grocery shopping. Let's go to Target together.
Come with us.
Yeah. So I have shot several sessions in Target now, and it's wonderful, and I love it. Yeah. Because that's what you do when you have 3-year-olds. Yeah. So my big thing is, like, don't put on any show for me. Like, let's do what you do. Yeah. Because that's going to be the thing that you want to remember.
Yeah. Do you find that as the month sort of progresses, there's more of a letdown of that guard? For myself, I'm generally doing 2-hour sessions, and I feel like I should just like not even hold the camera for the first half hour or 45 minutes, because it's like there's a certain awareness that as a photographer you just take up physical space, and there's even if the 3-year-old or 4-year-old isn't paying attention to me, the mom or dad is. And it's almost like after the session's over, like, okay, I'm going home now. Oh, look, everybody's nice and relaxed.
Exactly, yeah. So. And that's exactly why I started doing these long sessions. People think I'm crazy. And I always say that my sessions are about for like 0.02% of the population.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of moms don't want me in their house every day for a week,
Mm-hmm.
or for 6 hours at a time, or for 12 hours at a time. A lot of moms are like, oh, I could never have a stranger in my house that long.
Yeah.
But then they see the images and they're like, that's incredible. I would like that. I would like that documentation of my life. So I would absolutely say that the longer a session goes on or the longer a month goes on, the more relaxed people get.
Mm-hmm.
The more they're like, this is the lady that comes and has this gadget attached to her face the whole time. Like, the kids just don't think about it. They don't pose for me. They don't hand it up for the camera. They never say cheese. And that's a beautiful thing to me. Like, I really do get to do actual documentary photography. And that's so rare. People say they do lifestyle, they say they do photojournalism, they say they do documentary. But I'm like, really, are you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, can you say that you're doing that? There's nothing wrong with post photography at all. I think it's beautiful. And if I ever get headshots done, I would totally hire someone that does it. But there's something so unique about this relationship that I get to establish.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but think it's the right way to do it. I
Yeah.
believe in it.
Yeah.
I think it's important. I don't have children, but if I did, I couldn't imagine wanting them photographed a different way.
Yeah, yeah. We'll look at maybe one more image here.
Okay.
Let's do the kid on the changing table. And tell me a little bit about how you shot this and why you shot it this way, and
Yeah.
what the story is there.
Yeah, for sure. So this one is very special to me because this is actually my nephew.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a birth that I was photographing in Pennsylvania, and I live in Colorado. So I scheduled a 2-week trip home to Pennsylvania so I would hit this birth. And so I stay with my little sister, who is the mother of this child, on the changing table. And talk about like an immersion experience. I was living with them, and I just kind of had my camera next to me the entire time I was with them. And anytime I saw a moment that I think she might appreciate or I thought was funny, I would pull it out. And he was teething the whole time I was there. And this was just one of her tactics to get him to stop crying. If you can see, his eyes are a little bit wet. And he had just been shrieking at the top of his lungs because his teeth hurt. And so she just threw the lotion bottle at him, and he immediately started gnawing on it. And I thought it was hilarious because it's like such a mom move. Like, what can I do to appease this child right now? And she did it. And I mean, I had been there for almost 2 weeks at this time, so neither of them cared 1 minute that I was pressed up against her back, leaning over her to get the shot, because it was like I had been doing this for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of the perfect scenario. And I mean, what mom has not seen that view, looking down at a changing table a million times a day,
Mm-hmm.
when your kid is a newborn? Or, I mean, I think he's over a year in this photo. I mean, this is a mother's life for a long time, this view. So to give her that gift in 20 years is incredible to me, that she can remember, like, you know what, his teeth hurt at one moment and I gave him the lotion bottle. She would never remember that if I didn't have this photo for her.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's again, it's that emphasis on being present, right?
Yeah.
And knowing, trying to sort of project into the future. Like, I'm going to take this picture now, and it's not going to really hit home for another 3, 4, 5 years, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And tell me a little bit about when you feel most successful in your work, or when you feel like you've really accomplished your what you've set out to accomplish with your family photography. We've talked a little bit about how you're real future focused. What kinds of moments do you find that you feel you've sort of accomplished that mission that you're after?
Yeah, that's a hard question, just because I am so future focused. Like, I think about them appreciating these moments decades from now. But when I deliver a gallery and a mom responds to me and says, "You got it, like, you nailed it, this is my life," something that I reiterate over and over and over in my business is that moms deserve to feel important.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's like gender specific, but it's true. I wish it wasn't the reality, but most families I photograph, the mom stays home with the kid, and which is fine, but I just feel like mothers feel so underrated and so underappreciated. So to be with a mom for 12 hours a day, every day for a month, and to show her how much she does for her family is so incredibly special to me. I have so many mothers in my life. Almost all of my sisters are mothers. Almost all of my friends are mothers. And to help them see everything that they do, there's nothing that makes me happier than for a mom to feel special because of what I photographed of her.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me to feel special or successful in my work, it's a mom saying like, thank you for seeing me, you know, and for seeing what I do for my family. Not to say that dads aren't special. They totally are. And I photograph dads with the same amount of zeal that I do moms. But there's something special about a mom emailing me and saying like, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
mm-hmm.
This is for me,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. You know, what, sort of transitioning a little, for photographers or people that are thinking about family photography, you know, what kind of advice or recommendation would you make about moving towards this more journalistic style of photography? If you could offer your wisdom to photographers that, you know, appreciate this kind of style but might not sort of be, or might be on the fence about approaching clients or potential clients with this idea.
Do you want me to answer it for photographers or for people looking to hire a photographer?
We'll do for photographers, and then you can do for people looking to hire a photographer. You can do both.
Yeah, I'm just like very selfish in this arena. And if you're a portrait photographer listening to this, please don't think that I don't value what you do, because I can't do what you do. Part of the reason I got into this is because I'm not good at portrait photography. So please don't think I'm like demeaning the value of portrait photography, because it's very important and it's a special skill that I do not possess. But if you're a photographer looking to get into this, I mean, I think you have to be willing to be intimate. I think vulnerability breeds vulnerability. If you're willing to look at a family and say, I'm not perfect either, please don't clean your house for me. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of style all my social media and everything I put out into the world as like, hey, me too. Like, I'm not perfect either. I'm never going to show you a perfect image of my life. I'm going to show you the crappy food that I ate, even though I decided to go on a diet yesterday. I'm going to show you what I look like right when I wake up in the morning when I'm tired. I'm going to show you me in bed in the morning because I don't feel like getting out of bed. Or like if I had kids, I would totally show them throwing tantrums, because I think it's really important that people don't feel like you're living this perfect curated life. And so if I was a photographer that had children, I would just totally like exploit my children and all of their bad habits.
Well, you do have that dog. I mean, right?
I do, and she's terrible half the time. And I show that, like when she leaves muddy footprints in my house, and when she doesn't have good manners and barks at everyone that walks in the door. Like, I try very hard to be very realistic about my life, because that's what I demand of my clients. I ask my clients to be extremely vulnerable. So if you're a photographer, be vulnerable. Like, that's the most important part. If you want to attract people who are willing to put their life on display for you, you need to be willing to put your life on display for them. Mm-hmm. So that would be my advice to photographers.
How about to families?
Families, man, this is going to sound harsh, but I am so sick of seeing photos done in a field at the golden hour when you're all wearing your prettiest outfits. Like, it's so unoriginal. Who cares? Like, great, that's you on your best day. But is that really how you want your children to remember their childhood? That's not their childhood. That is not. Their childhood is going to the pool and going on a hike and throwing a tantrum at the breakfast table. Like, that is their childhood. So for me, I just find this work so important. I think it's so important. My mom did such an incredible job of documenting my childhood as it was, with a messy face, eating a cookie for breakfast, running around naked with a mullet. Like, that was my childhood, and I am so grateful to her for capturing it that way. As a 30-year-old, it gives me a glimpse of who I was always becoming, and that is so significant. I can look at myself in a home video reading Dr. Seuss, even though I had only memorized it and I couldn't read yet. I was 3, but I had memorized the whole book and I could read it, and I could see that, you know what, I'm going to be really interested in books one day. And just little things like that. There's so much about my mom, what my mom documented, that informed who I am as an adult. And to be able to give that gift to moms and to 3-year-olds who are someday going to be 30-year-olds, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I cannot endorse the style of photography enough. Even if you don't hire me, hire somebody that does it, because it's so important.
Yeah. Just one last thing to wrap up. What is your sort of vision moving forward? Do you have any special projects or personal projects on the horizon that you're trying to accomplish? Or where do you anticipate taking this ride? Do you have a long-term vision for continuing to document families like this? Or do you have anticipation of doing other things as well?
Yeah. I mean, in full disclosure, like, my business has not taken off yet. Like, as much as I would love to say I'm slammed 12 months out of the year with best month ever options, which is what I call my months that I spend with families, that is not the case. I would love to photograph a family every month of the year. That would be so ideal to me. So my vision is just to keep building on what I've started. I think that I am a little ahead of the curve in family photography. Like, when you think about family photography 20 years ago, it was going to Sears and sitting for a portrait and, that kind of thing. And then it evolved more into, like, sitting in your backyard for a portrait with lights and it all matching, like, white shirts and khaki pants. And then it turned into, like, going to a field and photographing your family. And it's just kind of like taking these steps of evolving every 5 years if you look at the traditional family portraits. So I do think this is where family portraiture is going. I think we're moving, if I can get a little more in depth here, like, my generation is extremely narcissistic and wants to put your best face forward all the time on social media. So I think documentary family photography is kind of like a stark reaction to that, and saying, no, we still value the real and the authentic, and we want to be genuine. So I think this reaction is just taking a long time to become mainstream. So I'm really just trying to ride the wave and trust my gut here, because I do think this is where it's going, and I could be completely wrong, and we could revert in another direction for sure. But I'm trying to trust my gut and say, people are going to catch on. This is going to be a big deal. And when it does catch on, I can say, hey, I've been here the whole time. I know what I'm doing. I've been practicing this forever. Like, come to me. So selfishly, I hope that's where it goes, but I have zero power in making that happen. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe if you take a picture of it now, it'll, in the future, it'll be right.
One can only hope.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming online here and sharing sort of your background and experience and vision for families and family photography. And I wish you all the best going forward into the future here, and hope that you're able to accomplish some of those goals and continue to create that sense of memory and purpose and place for those families. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. Me, not us.
I appreciate you taking the time. This is great. I feel like I'm on my soapbox all the time. Yeah. It's fun to get on someone else's soapbox for a change.
Well, here you are, all 10 viewers. So.
Yes, I'll take them.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for Thor Photography on YouTube, and special thank you to Rachel for joining us and her passion for family photography. There are links in the description below. You can go check out her work and learn more about her approach. Leave some feedback or comments below, and I look forward to continuing to share some interviews with creative people and go from there. So until next time, appreciate you tuning in. Thanks.